If your teams are using both Jira and ServiceNow, then I got a special treat for you. I've partnered up with my good friends over at Getint, and we're going to be doing an encore video, which means that this is the second time that I'm actually doing this very same integration between Jira and ServiceNow. The only exception is I've been using this actual integration for the last 7 months, and I wanted to show you how easy and comfortable I am with the tool now, because it really is a very easy to use tool with a team that is very reputable and has excellent customer service. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and if your teams have ever struggled with having duplicate data or moving data between ServiceNow and Jira and just being confused as to which one's the right source of truth, then this video is going to be perfect for you. And let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is either use the link down in the description to set up your free 30-day trial to ServiceNow, or just go to the Atlassian marketplace and look up for this ServiceNow integration for Jira. Next, you are going to want to read the documentation a little bit, especially when it comes to the ServiceNow side, because if you're not going to have admin rights, which is not technically required, you will need a user that has access to very specific data within ServiceNow. So Getint has great documentation that walks you through those steps so that you can appropriately set up that user if you're not comfortable or don't have the ability to get full admin rights. Over on the Jira side, you also don't need Jira admin rights per se, but I would highly recommend you use an account that has elevated access, because depending on what you're trying to connect or where you're trying to connect to, you're going to need the right level of access. So being at least a Jira admin, if not a site admin, just makes the entire experience a lot easier. And so do whatever makes sense for you, but just keep in mind, you're going to want to make sure that your users have the appropriate levels of permission and access on both sides, both in ServiceNow and in Jira. The other thing that you're going to need is on the Jira side, we do need to generate an API token, which we're going to do that a little bit later in the video. So at this point, I've already tried my free 30-day trial. Again, use that link down below if you get lost. And we now have Get integration configured in our Jira app. So all you need to do is go to Apps, go to Jira to ServiceNow integration, and then we're going to click on this workflow button here. And this is going to allow us to create an integration. So I'm going to click on the big blue button up here. And then we get to pick, do we want to do a continuous sync, a data migration, or a new feature, which is a sync get repository. Now we're going to focus on one of the first two, whether we want to do the continuous sync, which is really what most people try to do, or a data migration. Now for full disclosure, you may need to do a little bit of both. So let me tell you what the difference is between the continuous sync and the data migration. If you have a lot of data already inside of ServiceNow, then the data migration allows you to basically sync your data from ServiceNow into Jira, but now Jira knows about these legacy items, because essentially what happens, especially when we do continuous sync, is the moment we installed this integration, we are drawing a line in the sand. And so going forward, if you were to pick continuous sync, any item created in ServiceNow, Jira now knows about it because the integration tool is now configured, right? And so this continuous sync happens well. And so anytime you create a new item in Jira or anytime you create a new item in ServiceNow, they just know about each other and they're designed to work well because the integration tool has been installed. However, there's historical data. So anything before the moment of installation, if you want ServiceNow or Jira or the Getint tool to know about this data, then you do need to do what's called a data migration. Now, data migrations are a different pricing plan, so I recommend you reach out to Getint to figure out what works best for you and your team. Now, I personally have not had to migrate my data because we simply just snapped the line and we said anything from this point forward, this is what we want. Anything in the past, then we don't really care about it. However, you should know that Getint does allow you to migrate up to like about 100 items. So if you did want to bring in over a few items that are in flight, then I would recommend you take advantage of that. If not, take a look at their pricing for bringing all your data, all that historical data before we installed Getint. Now, because of what I just described, we're going to just want to go with the continuous sync, which is essentially going to basically do the two-way handshake. That is essentially what we want. Now, the interface is super easy. First, you're going to give it a name. I like to do like Jira this ServiceNow. I'm going to call it a 2 just in case I've already had one in the past. And then we got to connect our apps. We're going to be able to connect one app on one side, for example, Jira, and then we're going to do ServiceNow. I don't think the order matters too much, but you do just need to connect both apps. So let's do Jira first. So we're going to click on that, and then we're going to go look for Jira. Once we're in Jira, we need to create a new connection. And this is where you're going to put the URL for your Jira. And so in my case, I'm just going to grab this URL from up here, and I'm going to put it here. Then I'm going to click on next, and then we need to authenticate. And so this is where I highly recommend you do a couple of things here. One, change this. This connection to Jira might get confusing, especially if you have a sandbox or a production. So just call this what it is. So I'm going to call it APTEC Jira side. All right. Then you're going to put your email address, which is your login. And then you're going to put your access token, which is going to be that API token. So before we put any information here, let's go grab that API token. And so you simply click on this create access token. This is going to open up a new tab. This is going to redirect you to login. Okay, so once you're here, you're just going to simply create an API token, call it ServiceNow Getint. Set your expiration date. By default, these expire within a week. So you're going to want to set it up for maybe a year or as much as your company allows you to go. And so I'm just going to go a year from now, hit create. And then you're going to copy this because this is the last time you'll ever see this. So you want to make sure you copy that now, because if you don't and you don't save it, you'll never, ever, ever, ever see your API token again. So make sure you save that somewhere. Over here, go and paste it. And then you make sure you log in with the username that you're going to be using for this integration. And again, this user should be the admin user on the Jira side. Click on add, and now we're ready to go. So the Jira side is ready. We're just going to select our connection. And we're now going to pick our projects. And so what you can do here is basically start figuring out, okay, out of all the data that I have, what information do I want to actually send or interact with in ServiceNow? So you might want to do one project. You might want to do multiple projects, but it's great to narrow down. Otherwise, too much data is going to be going back and forth. So in this particular case, I have a very specific Jira project that I'm going to want to connect with ServiceNow. So I have my all-in prep here, and then I'm going to click connect. So the Jira side is done. And so now we got to go over to the ServiceNow side. So we're going to click on connect app. And this time we're looking for ServiceNow. And so that icon is right here. We're going to create a new connection. We're going to go grab our URL from ServiceNow. We're going to place this one here. We're going to click on next. And then this time we need to use a username and password. And so just put that information in. Now, when you set up these connections, as I mentioned with the Jira one, it's a good idea to name these things because as you can see, if you don't name them, they default to the same name. And so now I have two connections with the same name, but pointing to two different instances. So now the devil's in the detail. So do yourself a favor and rename these things so you don't have to get confused as to which one's which. Pick your connection and hit connect. So at this point, Get Integration is talking to Jira and Get Integration is talking with ServiceNow, but now we got to get them to talk to each other. And so all we're going to do now is do the quick build. And this is a new feature that is currently in beta, but I like it because it gives us a good starting point. And essentially what it does when you click on build there is it goes off and starts doing the mapping for us. So all I have to do is sit back, enjoy the show for a couple of seconds, and Getint is going to do all the heavy lifting for me. So there's not going to be a whole lot that I need to do other than just fine tune the configuration that it's going to do for me. Now, of course, you always do have the option to do this manually. So if you feel comfortable and just want to read through the documentation, doing the actual mappings is very trivial and very easy. You just need to come in understanding what's what in ServiceNow and what's what in Jira. And this, if you're a typical Jira admin, this is really easy to do from the Jira perspective, but from the ServiceNow side, usually this is uncharted territory for us, and we don't really know a whole lot. So you may need a ServiceNow admin on the call with you because they are going to know the databases and how ServiceNow works and the name of the fields and the name of the actual statuses in ServiceNow. But if you are fortunate enough to know both informations, then Bob's your uncle. You're going to be able to set this up really easily. But typically, I've had a ServiceNow admin on the call with me because they're going to help me just understand the different fields that are available. So after a few moments, this quick build is going to go and take a best guess as to the different fields that are available. So for different work item types, it's going to help us with some mapping. So we got our title from Jira goes to the short description on ServiceNow. That's what they call it there. Our description in Jira goes to description in ServiceNow. And each of these is configurable. If for whatever reason you wanted to bring another field like a custom field, well, all you need to do is click on add mapping field, select Jira on the left, then pick the field that's available on the left. So maybe you want to do your assignee, and then you're going to go to ServiceNow on the right, and then you're going to figure out what is the name of the assignee in ServiceNow. And this is where you need to figure out, do we have groups? Do we have users? Like that's where you do need a ServiceNow admin to help you translate what the different fields are, because ultimately they need to map correctly with the values inside of Jira. So go through all of these and you're essentially going to tweak for your bugs, for your stories, for whatever it is you're trying to actually integrate with the ServiceNow item. Now I'm going to accept the defaults here just for the interest of making this video interesting, but I highly recommend that you go through each item and you basically do this carefully because you need to select the correct level, the correct work item type in ServiceNow, and you need to map it with the correct work item type inside of Jira. ServiceNow is a beast. ServiceNow is way, way more complicated than Jira. And so, again, as a Jira admin, you aren't usually privy to all the configurations that are on the ServiceNow side. So go and figure out the right things, because rhythms and incidents and all that, like, they're very different. They work differently than they do in Jira. Jira is way, way, way easier. So I'm just going to accept these defaults here, and I'm just going to show you a couple more things that I typically do. So I'm going to click into this epic to requested item. I'm going to click on fields because there's a couple things that I want to show you. One, this assignee one, it's not liking it because we need to do a little bit of a mapping assignment. So we clicked on the little gear, and now we need to map values here, which is why I would not recommend that you do this, but essentially you want to map the user inside of ServiceNow with the user in Jira so that they're the same. But once you do that, you're going to click on add, and then that integration is going to be ready to go. There's also a couple of checkboxes here that are very important that you should be paying attention to. So you have a lot of flexibility here. And so you can set the assignee when the Jira item's created, and then it can send it over to ServiceNow. So you can basically set the assignee in ServiceNow. And whenever the work item is updated, you can also set to get those updated. So if you want to do them on created or on updated, you get to turn features on or off depending on what you want to do. Now I'm going to click close here, and I'm going to go to my status. Another major exercise you're going to want to go through is mapping your statuses from Jira to your statuses in the workflow in ServiceNow. And so you basically just pick a status in Jira, and you're going to map it to a status inside of ServiceNow. Again, work with your ServiceNow admin to figure out which one's the appropriate mapping here. Click on add, go through this exercise, your to-dos, any other statuses in your Jira workflow need to map up with the appropriate status in ServiceNow. Now let's talk about comments and attachments. This is one of my favorite features of this whole thing, and that is, instead of duplicating data or instead of having to pay for multiple licenses, your integration is going to allow you to communicate across both tools. And so we'll start off with comments. You have the ability to either sync both ways. So comments go from both Jira to ServiceNow. So if somebody adds a comment in ServiceNow, it'll go to Jira and vice versa. Or you have the ability to just say, hey, any comments in Jira, send them to ServiceNow, or vice versa. You can say any comments in ServiceNow, send them over to Jira. So pick the option that makes most sense for you. But what I want to focus on is a couple of these sections here. So one of the main things that I wanted to do is not every comment needs to go to ServiceNow. And so what you are allowed to do is you can either exclude or permit. So you're always sending, or you only explicitly send something very, very intentional. And so I'm going to do permit comments, and then you have your attributes. So I'm going to say content, and then I'm going to say contains. And so this is going to say like external dash, right? And what this does is whenever I have a comment that has the word external dash, right? I'm being very intentional with that hyphen here. Then that comment, I want to send it to ServiceNow, right? Because if it's not there, then I don't want these comments. I want my agents or my users in Jira to have a private conversation in Jira. And when they want to communicate with that ServiceNow customer, that's when they're going to add this text, and it's going to go over to ServiceNow. Again, totally up to you how you want to set this up. This is just one of the use cases that I've seen where not every comment from Jira needs to make it over to ServiceNow, which is eventually exposed to that ServiceNow customer. So use what makes sense for you. We have our ability to automatically link comments to related work items when created. You can check or deselect these. I will tell you that this section does get a little verbose. So for every comment that goes back and forth, those comments, that comment area is going to get verbose with a bunch of information here. So if you don't care for any of that, you can turn these off. Or if you actually do want to see who the author is, who's sending the messages back and forth, then make sure you turn these things on. Just keep in mind it will take up some space. Down below, we have the ability to do public and private comments, again, from both Jira and from ServiceNow. And so pick the options that makes sense to you. I just like doing this. I think for me, it's a lot easier to just do the content contains. Below the comments, we have our attachments. So very similar to our comments. If you want, you can sync the attachments both ways, from Jira to ServiceNow or from ServiceNow to Jira. It's all up to you. I'll leave it with both ways. And then you have the ability to do your public attachments, or insert your attachments as a Jira comment. Once you're done with that, hit the apply button again here, and we're basically done. You're just going to go through this basically multiple times over and over for each work item type, map it up with the right ServiceNow thing. But once you're done, once you've set these all up, you've mapped your fields, you've done your statuses, you're done anything with your comments and your attachments, you're ready to just hit create. And once you hit create, then this integration is off to the races. and it's on a cyclical 180-second loop. And so every 3 minutes or so, you're going to get a sync, right? It's always consistently talking to each other. Now, one thing to note is that depending on where you catch it in this 3-minute loop, the experience that you are going to see is either going to be very, very instantaneous because you caught it like at second 179 out of 180, or you might have to wait the whole 3 minutes if the trigger happened like on second 3 out of 180. So just know that every 180 seconds this is looping, and sometimes you're going to get lucky and you're going to catch it at the tail end, so it's going to feel very quick, or sometimes you're going to catch it at the very, very, very beginning and it's going to feel a little bit slower. But just know that after 3 minutes, you're always going to have your integration running. You can always check here for your latest synced items. This is going to give you a list of everything that has been synced. And this is going to just show you every run every 180 seconds, whether it caught something or not. So every 180 seconds is just running, but every once in a while, it's actually going to catch something, right? You're actually going to create a new work item. You're going to create a new item in ServiceNow. There's going to be a comment. There's going to be an attachment. There's going to be an update to the Jira item, right? Those things are going to get caught, and then they'll show up in the latest synced items because those changes are the ones we're catching. And so that's how both of these work. So you're going to want to get very familiar with both latest runs. You'll see every run every 180 seconds, as you can see here. Or when actually something happens, it'll show up here in the latest synced items. So to wrap this video up, let's just go and test this out. We're going to go into our Jira. So I'm actually going to open up a new tab. Trust me when I tell you it's much easier to have a second tab open to do this. We're going to go into a Jira project, specifically the one that we told it to, right? We don't want to be going to a completely different project. And I'm simply going to create a brand new story. So here we're going to do demo to ServiceNow 1. I'm going to click on create. Now I want to remind you, this happens in a 180-second interval. So if we're lucky and we caught it at second 179, then we're going to wait a little time because it's in 1 second, the trigger is going to happen, and then we're going to have the sync. However, if we're unlucky and we caught it in second number 1, then we do have to wait the 179 seconds before the sync happens again. So we're going to go into the logs and we're going to wait and look for that integration to happen. So over in the Getint side, we're going to go for latest synced items, and we're just waiting for the latest run. And while we wait for this sync to happen, I want to let you know of a few important things. Number 1, the app now supports OAuth both in Jira and in ServiceNow. This is very, very important because many customers have been asking for this, and it's now available. Number 2, the app will be supporting Forge very, very soon. So if you have a hard requirement for Forge, know that this app is going to be updated to run on Forge very, very soon. Number 3, Getint holds both SOC Type 2 compliance and ISO 27001 certification. And finally, Getint supports data residency. So your app can be stored in any location that has an AWS for you. So as you can see, we successfully have AL34 triggered. And when we click on the synced with, we are going to be able to see the ServiceNow URL. So we can click on that. Now keep in mind that you have the option to map like the URL and the ServiceNow ID into Jira. And there's steps to do that in the description below. But for now, let's just simply log into ServiceNow so we can see that our request has indeed come through. All right, so here is the request that we created in Jira inside of ServiceNow. As you can see, the short description is demo to ServiceNow 1. Now we want to show the bidirectional sync. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to go over to Jira. I'm going to come down to the comment section, and I'm going to say, this is a comment from Jira. We'll wait for the sync to happen, and then we're going to see this comment inside of ServiceNow. And then once I have that comment in ServiceNow, I'll reply back and we'll see a ServiceNow comment inside of Jira. So let me show you what that looks like. All right, after a few seconds, you can see that this is a comment from Jira, and let me zoom in for you. And this is the comment that we got from Jira. And so now all I need to do is add a comment inside of ServiceNow, and it's going to show back up in Jira. So let me do that now. When I click on post, we're going to see that this is a comment here, but in just a few seconds, we're going to see it over on the Jira item itself. And after a quick refresh, we can see that this is the comment from ServiceNow. Now keep in mind that these items here are configurable. If you remember back in the ServiceNow integration under comments, we do have the ability to check these checkboxes with the sync original item ID and the comment creation date. So this is going to alter the text that you see in these comments here. And so keep that in mind that those are configurable, and you have some options when it comes to getting them set up. But as you can see, it's super easy. Now that the handshake has been established between Jira and ServiceNow, your teams can work in either or, and all of the data is going to be synced back and forth, depending on the configurations that you set up with the Jira to ServiceNow Getint integration. So check it out. Let me know what you think. Use that link down in the comment section down below to start your free 30-day trial of Getint's Jira and ServiceNow connector. And let me know what you think down in the comments as well. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.